Hello, thank you guys so much for clicking this video today. I really appreciate it. This is the Cardano Aura podcast. I bring anybody on that I feel is bringing huge value to the Cardano ecosystem. And today, it's a little bit different. You know, we're actually going to be doing a community panel for the Cardano 2021 Summit. So this is the Cardano Aura Cardano 2021 Summit Edition. And today, I have three awesome people on here with me. The first person is Alexander Monad, the creator of Unsigs. Second is Lena. She actually works for Input Output Global. And then she also created Claymates and Claymates Nation, which is doing crazy lately. You know, congratulations on that.
Thanks.
And third, we have Alex Tai, the creator of Theos, a place where you can actually get instant liquidity for your NFTs. I'm very excited to actually learn more about Theos in this podcast today. And really the outline of this podcast is we want to introduce our project, what we plan on building in the future, and then also talk about really the direction of NFTs and CNFTs on a short-term timeline and even a long-term timeline, because I really do feel that NFTs, this is just the beginning. And right now it's pictures, but eventually they're going to have a huge part in our world, you know, in our daily lives. So to start off, you know, let's actually start with introducing one of our projects. Any takers?
No, Lena, go ahead. Go on.
Sure. So, as Clay already said, I'm working for Input Output, but prior to that, I founded the Claymates, which I basically since forever I've always loved stop motion animation, and although I'm not particularly artistically talented when it comes to animating stuff, I do have quite a creative mind and vision in that sense, and I just thought that something that would be so fun to see popping up would be stop motion and claymation on the Cardano blockchain when I saw these other NFT projects coming up. So I got in touch with a friend, Joe, who is a very talented animator. He's been animating since he was 7. And I kind of said, look, I need you to make this guy out of clay and then have a clay bird fly out of his head, because everyone's just talking about the birds. And that's kind of where it started. It was just like a silly idea in that sense. And then from there, it's obviously escalated a bit. But yeah, it's kind of where it kicked off.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Doing super well right now, right? Tons of people on Twitter and in the secondary markets.
Yeah, I think we've just crossed 4 million in secondary market sales, which is crazy.
Just displaced somebody else as the number 2 project on Cardano. So
yeah, just kicked this kind of popular project off of the second spot, and people are pissed.
Yeah, I'm like number 5 now because of that.
Sorry.
Well done, kudos.
Thanks. So should we go to number 3? Kidding.
Number 3? Okay. Cheers. I'm Alexander. I'm behind Unsigned Algorithms, which was basically my attempt to address some of the criticism I had of NFTs, right? When I learned about NFTs through SpaceBuds and through Cardano, actually. And you know, as a designer or architect who kind of works with materials in a previous life, I wanted to kind of understand what was this thing and address what I felt, you know, this criticism of it's just a link to a JPEG was. And so I tried to think about this idea of material honesty in architecture, like how do you express the materiality of the things you're working with, whether it's steel or concrete or glass, right? Like the thing an architect will hate most is like a vinyl sticker that makes something look like something it's not. Like a piece of MDF furniture at IKEA with a wood sticker on it or something like that, right? So I tried to think, what is the kind of medium of the blockchain, and how do we kind of work within that medium to express something else? And so what I came up with was obviously we can't put JPEGs directly on chain, but using programming we can kind of, you know, compress a lot of information down into a few lines of text. So Unsigned Algorithms is basically a collection it's just generated by like 80 lines of code that is stored directly on the Cardano blockchain. Little environment file that defines the exact versions of Python and a few other libraries which are used to generate it. And then a bunch of arguments that are actually embedded in the NFTs that basically get passed to that function. But you can recreate every JPEG or PNG from the code that is on chain. So even though it's not a smart contract, there is a kind of way to at least have the bones of the collection or the DNA of the collection online and if IPFS or anything goes down, it can still be recreated in the future. So that's that. Thank you.
So what's the use of that? How would you actually use that?
So I mean,
what does it mean
to
to the
me,
man?
there's no utility. To the man on the street, I think I'd say it's a little bit more resistant, not to throw FUD at other projects. Like I think I've bought a house in the States, and I went through this weird thing called title insurance, where I had to pay an insurance company to verify that the person who was selling the house had the right to sell me the house. Right, and I paid them a couple $1,000s to do that. And you know what I was actually buying was an insurance policy that if they did that wrong, they would reimburse me for the purchase price of the house. So that kind of innovation of NFT, that there's no question about who owns it, is real innovation, and it is, you know, what's kind of the core of all this buying and selling of links to JPEGs online. My kind of point of that was to try to make it not just the deed to the house online, but actually the putting the house on chain, right? And doing that in a way that was respectful to the blockchain without, you know, clogging it full of, you know, megabytes of two-dimensional images, right? So use of it, I guess, is you know, one definition of art that I tend to think of is like things without utility. My formal training is in design, and we tend to think of design as things that are kind of creative, that have function attached to them. But this was explicitly just an art project to kind of explore what is the I tend to think of it just like painting and photography. What are the limits of this medium, and how do you work within that to kind of express its, again, materiality?
Okay.
So I'd say no use.
I can think of some really cool use cases for that, to be frank, and some of the projects I'd like to get going. But you know, that's super interesting. Super interesting. So look, Theos, in a nutshell, it's liquidity for NFTs on Cardano. That's it. That's all you need to take away for that. We are, you know, we're not on Cardano yet, as you appreciate. We've just launched. We've got our MVP coming out later this month, where we'll be able to show you a really cool and very user-friendly, man-on-the-street-friendly minting mechanism. So literally you can drag and drop. So because people have no idea what a JPEG is or an MPEG or whatever, and they don't want to have to look up what their file is. They just want to drag it off their browser or, you know, off their libraries, you know, into Theos. And that's what, so we've got some really, really cool onboarding mechanisms. I'd love to work with both you guys and see what sort of collaborations we can do. We want to be for the community. So we're not an option, you know, we want to be part of the community that, you know, is providing people, you know, it's free minting, you know, so people will come to us. We're not charging as anyone else does for minting. And I think the beauty of Cardano means that, you know, that minting process becomes less expensive. You know, everyone understands the issues with Ethereum at the moment and the gas fees. And, you know, within this community, we all understand what the promise is, you know, with Cardano, that we're going to reduce those fees and also reduce the impact on the planet. So first of all, we provide really, really user-friendly minting and account setup. So the whole pain that you have with setting a wallet up and all the rest of that becomes really, really easy with our interface. So, you know, please check it out later this month, theos.fi, and see how easy it's to mint. And we'll bring on, you know, the much bigger universe of people there that could be influenced by NFTs or use NFTs in the future. But then the main thesis, where we are a very good option, we hope, and I'm sure there'll be lots of people in the future providing liquidity or different rewards, you know, for that we can call liquidity for NFTs, is to give some of that back. So, you know, when you buy a house, not many people buy a house for cash, you know, and you know, some people buy cars for cash, you know, at these days, but more people will actually recover or have some sort of financial instrument or some way to get liquidity back once they own that asset. And that's the basic principle that we are then trying to. So if you spend $1,000 on an NFT, you know, one of the Claymates or, you know, something like, you know, some really cool thing, some really cool NFT, then why not allow someone to take $700 of that back out and stick it into a pool, and possibly even leave it in a pool that will create with Theos that, you know, you can have it continually for auction. So if you paid $1,000 for it, but you take $10,000 for it, there's always a price. Well, more often than not, there's always a price. Now you set a figure, and maybe that's always for sale, but you'll own it, during that period of time, and then but you're able to recover some of the liquidity. So that's really what Theos is about, and it can be that we'll go on to talk about it, I'm sure, Peyton. There's different forms of NFTs that are existing right now, and where we think they'll be in the future. But this can provide liquidity for all sorts of instruments that are NFTs in the future. So that's what it is: liquidity for NFTs on Cardano, Theos.
I don't know how in depth we need to get, but I'm curious. How do you assess the value, right? Because you have a collateralized loan, basically. How do you, if I'm trading?
That was my exact question too. I'm curious.
Look, price discovery is always the question from the smart people that are on this. It's pretty easy if someone's already paid something for it, and then it's automatic market making. So so if you've paid $1,000 for something, and it's coming from a site, coming from OpenSea, coming from one of the other sites, we want to come across. We want to work with all of the community that's producing NFT. And this brings some complexity into we'll want people to mint on Cardano because we think it's better for the planet and also cheaper for them, for the future. OpenSea mints on Ethereum. So how do we collateralize? How do we bring these things together? But basically, to answer your question, price discovery is what you paid for it. We'll give you a percentage of that. So in some instances, you might only get 10% of that if it's a really low
volume.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you might get 70 or 80% of that. Sometimes you might get 100% of that if it's really a solid price. And then it's the market making, because you'd be putting these into auction pools, and it's just whatever someone will pay for it, from out of that pools. The point being that we can actually bring these NFTs together in pools. So you might have not just one, but you might have 50 NFTs in this pool, and then we'll wrap an ERC20 token around it, making it fungible. And then you can take parts of that out, so you can invest in it. So that automatic market making will give you price discovery there, together with verifiable pricing, paid for NFTs in the first place, and percentage of that. But there's smarter people than me that work on price discovery that will be employed all the time to make sure that the price is fair.
Yeah,
super exciting.
Yeah, it is super exciting too, because long term, that's where NFTs are going to be. It's going to be houses. It's going to be stable things to where, you can easily derive a price and pull liquidity from it. And that's why, my first question was about the price, because, for example, Claymates, I was paying 49 ADA a piece for those. And then I flipped one yesterday for 1900 ADA. That's pretty ridiculous, and that was in a week or two. So, if you have a liquidity pool that holds all this value, and the market moves that fast, because with no financial advice, but next week ADA could go up and then Claymates could fall in half. So it's the idea of a liquidity pool for the NFTs and how crazy they are. It seems so complicated, but in the future, say 5 years out, when governments are actually having property that holds value very well on the blockchain. It's a huge use case, and there's no nuance. You guys are actually figuring out how to do this now with artworks, but 5 years from now, that is going to be in place,
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting how artwork is allowing us to do all this, because, again, by definition, there is no utility, right? And so it's kind of interesting to me that how that has allowed this kind of exploration to happen so quickly, versus building out a DeFi protocol. You don't want to move fast and break things there, right? And so it's kind of interesting. When I first saw NFTs, I was quite skeptical, and I thought, I want to build serious things on Cardano. But then I saw what was happening, and now the whole narrative is about this is maybe the first killer app that shows the power of Cardano's ability to scale. Because we're not blowing up the network, and Charles isn't saying we need to move the NFTs to layer 2 because they've exploded the gas fees, as some other headline blockchain figures have done recently. It's just quite amazing to me how the thing is. It's almost like the tail wagging the dog a bit. But it's quite exciting.
That's a point well made, because right now, price discovery, we're thinking about it in the context of crypto art and things which people we may not even believe the price of a Claymate. The Claymate's absolutely worth it, by the way, Lena. And what more? I think it's a tiny percentage of what it should be worth for the future, but it's very new, so people really can't get used to what the value could be. but it's very well established. If we create an NFT which is actually the deeds to someone's house, and we're attaching that to self-sovereign identity, so now we can match a self-sovereign identity to a verifiable credential, which is the deeds to someone's house. The price discovery is really easy, but what happens is you're now throwing that into a decentralized market place, which is going to increase the value of that. So then, the automatic market making tools that we have that are available to us in the DeFi community, can drive the value of that particular property up, because there's so much more penetration into the markets, and also providing access to people that just don't have it. One of the things that I really believe that Cardano is capable of doing is providing massive scale, and if we can provide NFTs which are actually the forms of, whether they are birth certificates, whether they are KYC credentials for AML, so that we can provide the diaspora with cross-border payments, based in Cardano and based on self-sovereign identity protocols. This is going to be able to provide, banking to the unbanked. And everyone says, how are we going to cure, the 1.5 billion people on the planet that don't have access to banking? Well, it's really easy. Give them a bank. But you have to give them a bank which is really inexpensive to operate. The people owning that bank should be the people that are in it, a decentralized bank, and they put it on a platform where you can have verified credentials. So you can have a verifiable credential and a KYC. So this is me, and it's attached to my self-sovereign identity. So this is the place I'm going to put my deeds to my house, having bought it. In my multi-sig wallet that is able to contain all these various different NFTs. That's the future. We need to be able to provide financial. We need to be able to provide banking and credentials to the people that don't have it now. And the way to do it is to do it on Cardano in a decentralized marketplace.
I'm quite interested to see the intersection of what happens when NFTs go on hardware wallets and get sent to free ports. And you get these kind of very savvy, sophisticated investors who are usually, shipping around Italian Renaissance paintings into. Are you familiar with what free ports are?
Yeah,
I'm not.
If you watch Tenet or what's another movie, Billionaires, they feed there's these kind of like duty-free zones inside of ports, which have been kind of turned into these tax-free havens where they build out like climate-controlled facilities under very high security, and because you pay duty once something leaves the country or enters the country, they're basically free from those import-export duties. And if you move things around within from Freeport to Freeport, it's kind of like a major loophole around a lot of tax things. And you can think about how much easier it is to ship a hardware wallet between a Freeport than it is, a Renaissance master painting, right? And the kind of insurances you need to do that. Like, I think it's not a very nice thing, but I do think once you have that kind of thing exposed, doesn't really matter what the underlying asset is. Like, sophisticated financial investors are going to exploit that and use it as a store of value, right? As a means to say it's located here. The access to it, even though it's on a chain, is through this key. It can't be done through any other key, whatever. And I think it's going to really drive like a large amount of capital flows. And it seems like Alex Tai is kind of connected to some of this stuff, and I see that happening.
You're absolutely right. But so I'm a director of the Global Blockchain Business Council, and the GBBC. We're advising governments. We're advising the Fed. We're advising all sorts of different people. Not me specifically, but our organization. Yeah. And the dilemma that you see, for example, the US government have, is that that they are the international reserve currency. That's what the dollar is at this stage. And the problems they had with Zuckerberg and Libra was, hang on a sec, we can't have Zuckerberg in charge, and take away the primacy of our greenback. So they were upset about that. But now they've probably got something, with Circle and the guys that they put together from Accenture and Dante Dispati and these people to, have a controllable stablecoin, US stablecoin. They are absolutely interested in the DeFi community, but they're really, at the moment it's underground, but they need to regulate it. So they're desperate to find the appropriate forms of regulation. So free ports don't become a place where you circumnavigate the regulation which absolutely should be provided. Because we as the DeFi community, I hate to say this, and it's probably controversial, but we do need to be regulated because there are people in our community that aren't good actors. There are some bad actors in our community, and we need to know that the investments in the DeFi space are secure. So they should be regulated. And what the US wants to do is to have those taxes that come with regulation, because it's all about tax at the end of the day, flow to the US Treasury. And that's not necessarily fair, for a Chinese DeFi market that's dealing with a Chinese customer in China. So that we have to look at governmental regulations. We have to work out the way that the DeFi community can engage and allow regulation on a local basis that will open things up to a global system which becomes accessible to more people. So look, I think free ports, it's interesting, but I don't subscribe to free ports being the way to go, because it's just driving it underground. It's like prohibition.
I don't think so. One thing that I do when I think about technology is I don't think about what I want to happen, but I see where do I see it going, right? Because I tend to until very recently, nobody knew my name outside of my family, and now there's a small community of people who are into Cardano who like what I've done. But it is interesting to me just to think about where do we see this going, and most of what I'll say today is not about what I want to happen or what I hope to happen, but just seeing like the powder kegs in the room and what's likely to happen once this match gets set, kind of thing. So not arguing for free ports and just saying it might.
Lena, what's the future of NFTs?
Well, real quick, let me introduce my project real quick.
I was about to say, actually, you put your own.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to start talking about gaming because you touched on that's not where we want it to go, but that's where we think it's going to go. So I immediately wanted to jump into gaming, but I'm like, heck, got to do my project first. So
way more fun than taxes.
So my name is Big Pay. I run a YouTube channel. You guys can find me just by searching BIG space PEY on YouTube. I make a lot of Cardano content. I first got my start creating Bloom Stakepool. We actually made the 8th block on Cardano. But recently, I've gotten into NFTs because I just saw how cool they were. And I really never realized how much I love them. I really do. I wake up very often thinking about NFTs, which is such a crazy shift for me personally, because when I first heard about them, I kind of thought they were useless. I didn't understand it. I didn't see any utility there or any value there, but I still thought they were cool, and I always liked artwork. So someone who's done art and he's actually the co-founder of my NFT project, Mycelial Gallery. His name is Project.
Hi, I'm Project, co-founder and creative director of Mycelial Gallery, a digital art gallery running on Cardano. We are passionate about mycology and believe that fungi play a crucial role in the future of our species and planet. From cleaning polluted soil and habitat restoration, to creating eco-friendly insecticides, mental health and neurotrophic properties, to protection from smallpox and even flu viruses. We believe the invention of the internet, and now blockchain, are inevitable consequences of previously proven biologically successful models, which is why we are compelled to give a portion of our profits to research groups that further our understanding in this field.
Our next project is completely free and only, I guess I can't say gives value back because that's, a security, but, it just takes what we've already created and builds on top of it, without asking for any more money. And we're really, really excited for the next burn. I want to say more about it, but I'm not going to here.
I think you just touched on something nice, which is building on building. And I think this is something we talked about recently, actually, and something that I've been blown away with in the community is how people have taken the NFTs that people are making and the creations and the content and are building on it. And actually, in particular, I was going to say, Maynard, about unsigs, I think that's something that I just thought was amazing. How obviously something that was quite nice when you released, obviously you said, copyright is yours. And what people started building with their unsigs and the way they've been pulling them together and collecting them in that sense, I think was just quite unique, the way that people were doing it, and really, I don't want to say obsessing, but obsessing over the particular styles, the particular collections, and then actually producing and building on the art that you've provided in that first sense and creating something new. And I think that was super unique. I don't know if you wanted to comment on your surprise of that.
I think it's, I was trying to figure out what an NFT is. And I think it has, a lot of us are conditioned to think about scarcity as like the dominant mode of ownership. But I think NFTs are much more about authenticity after giving it some thought. And because my mom was very confused when she saw what I was doing. She's like, honey, anyone can download the images that you put on the website.
Right,
and I'm like, yeah, right. I'm like, that's not really the point. Like anyone can do that, but they're choosing to support me. I think it's this weird kind of like Patreon hybrid type thing where like someone likes what you're doing, they want to support it. Yes, there is some kind of financial upside to it. The copyright thing was more about like, I wanted to imbue something in the token because I didn't understand what an NFT was without that. Right, because anyone has the right to view it, right, for free online anywhere, and you can't take that away. Like it seemed like there should be something that goes along with the token, and so for me, copyright was a natural answer. The code being there was part of it too, and I think it's just when I think about it, I've gotten so much more out of it than what I gave up because like I think otherwise would have just faded off of the front page, right? Like many projects do. But because of the kind of liberal usage of that kind of license, which was granted to everyone, like they're constantly showing up in memes, they're constantly showing up in other people's NFTs. It's kind of like a popular thing for other creators now to buy a few unsigs and put them in their backgrounds, right? As a unique kind of thing. And I think that's kind of like what people have to come to terms with is like that to me is part of the new nature of this medium is that it's if you try to hold on to it tightly and say mine and slap other people for touching your thing, I don't think it's going to work so well. I think you almost have to adopt it or it's weird because I don't necessarily like everything that everyone's doing with them, but that's not my place really. Like once I put it out there, right?
You mean you don't like
I don't
the
like thingies? No. I exactly right. Like I'm not, but I'm not an arbiter of taste, right? I've put this out there, and then even as a creator, I think I'm a little bit trusting the audience to do something, and I try to make it clear, like I'm not really endorsing anyone's things. Some things that I personally like, I might retweet or whatever, but I actually try to make it quite clear. I haven't collabed with anyone, even major projects such as yourself, right? Like people have taken advantage of the licenses or the license that is granted to them and used their unsig how they chose to. And I haven't lifted a single finger in any of these collabs that people are doing. It's just them doing what everyone else is doing, right? I think that's kind of interesting.
And it's a fundamental requirement, I think, in the DeFi space, authenticity. But a project that I've been working on for the last 10 years that's now called Planet.com. When I was at the Virgin Group, we helped seed a satellite constellation. So we ended up with the largest constellation of satellites taking images of the planet, because we wanted to have a data set that was going to be a picture of the planet at a resolution which you could actually derive some information from, that was taken on one day. Because there's lots of, black satellites up there taking pictures of places in Syria and the Middle East and parts of China. But they've got a huge amount of granulation over tiny little pieces of land. But no one cares about the rainforests, and no one cares about the ice caps and the oceans. 71% of the planet is blue, and no one really takes any pictures of it. But we need to know, where the salinity is. We need to know what the temperatures are, and we can get all that from the wavelengths of the light that come from it. So
just to clarify, I do care a lot about those things.
Yeah, we should all care. We all care about that. So we put that data set up there to start a thing that we were trying to get going called Earth Sentinel. That was really to just take the blindfolds off the United Nations and say, look, this is what's happening in Brazil. This is what's happening in the oceans. This is where, we can actually see what the health of the planet is. But the data needs to be seen to be authentic and not tampered with. People are tampering with satellite photographs all the time. So, the idea that we had initially was just put a timestamp on it. By the time it lands on the planet, which is a few milliseconds after it, there's no time. But it'd be far better to use Unisig to say, actually, this was actually the character of that data set that was landed. And when you're looking at it now in the court of arbitration, is it the same character of that NFT that we've created, if we call it an NFT, that was that picture taken on the planet, that that tree wasn't there and it was burnt down or removed for logging, or that polar bear didn't exist, or whatever it was. So authenticity for what we're doing and uniqueness. So attaching it to a self-sovereign identity, so we show the ownership in the case of, this is my KYC report, this is my credit report. That's really, really fundamental to the growth of our industry, my view.
That's super interesting. There's a project I became aware of. I think it was like a Japanese American artist in the States in this last century, who I think when the thing that I remember is like on Telegram or something, like a real Telegram, not the internet chat service. Like he would send a message saying, "I am still alive." The recipient was supposed to understand that message, just like truth, was only valid like in the moment that it was sent, and that you didn't really know if the person was still alive or not. And I think one of the fundamental natures of blockchains and NFTs is exactly this intersection with what you said about satellite data, which is that you can know. It's kind of like the newspaper with the hostage, right? Like proof of life or this kind of thing. It's quite interesting. And actually the project that I put on hold to make Unstigs was this kind of DeFi parametric insurance project, which the dream was to be able to provide like a rainfall crop insurance to farmers in India, using hyperspectral imaging or something. So maybe call you after this call.
So many use cases. So roll this forward. So now you've got this data set that we are saying verifiable credential, which is an NFT of this part of the rainforest. But now we have the capability that constellation of satellites up there is working. They've just gone from 7 wavelengths to 14 wavelengths. It's pretty smart data that we're getting back. We can now provide a picture, a verifiable credit that that tree exists every day, because every day, in fact, some places twice a day, a picture is taken to that resolution. And there's now they're doing it with radar, so you don't even have an issue with with clouds. So you're always going to be able to see that tree's there. So this expands to what the world really needs to help us save the planet is a decent carbon credit system. So now if you have a verifiable carbon credit, because actually, does my tree exist? Does my 10 square hectares of rainforest exist? Yes, it does, because I've got a picture of it that was taken today and it's authenticated. So it's real time. It's proof of life, as you just say. But not only that, but because of the wavelengths that we're getting from it, we can actually, it becomes not just quantitative, but qualitative. So we can tell you if that tree is healthy. Or if it's going, or we can actually show you a trajectory to show you that tree is in decline. So this becomes a really not just a verifiable, but a qualitative carbon credit, and that's what we should be basing the world's economy on. Lena, what do you think? Do you think Earth Sentinel is a good plan?
Yeah, I think it's cool. I think I don't want to contradict it in that sense. I do think offsetting your carbon emissions is obviously a good thing overall, but obviously the most important thing would be to not be so damaging to the planet first and foremost. I think that's something that's often overlooked, and especially in this space. I think we're often offsetting stuff, but we're not actually doing the first thing, which is not causing such detrimental damage to the environment. So I think that it's great that we can do that on Cardano, but by comparison to a lot of other blockchains. But yeah, just something to think about.
Yeah,
I think
it is important to provide that disincentive, though, especially corporations. Corporations often act as in whatever is going to give them the most profit. So the only way to push them away from that is a disincentive through carbon tax, in my opinion. It has to be more expensive to hurt the planet than to do it in a non-hurting the planet way,
Absolutely.
Sure, but then there's like greenwashing as well. So some of these big corporations just do all that and then donate, and it makes them look better as well.
But you're right. Absolutely, you shouldn't be doing the damage. But as Peyton points out, if they have to buy $1 million worth of carbon offset credits, which are verifiable, and they're versus only $100 because they're doing less, drive them to do the things which cause less damage to the planet. And that they don't, if they don't have a conscience, they're driven by cost, this is the way to inflict that pain. So I think Peyton's absolutely correct. It's going to work. Otherwise, they'll just cover it up more efficient.
More with the collectible and the art aspect of NFTs as it relates to this topic. I've had a few friendships that were kind of singed when I told them I was making NFTs, because they immediately became like super woke, anti, like you're ruining the environment, blah blah blah. And they, before I could even explain to them, no, I'm doing this on Cardano. It's a proof of stake blockchain. It doesn't involve GPUs or mining. Like they just stopped talking to me and blocked me. And I guess that's because the friendship was a weaker one. But I had an art professor I used to eat breakfast with 3 times a week that I worked in his studio for when I was a grad student, and I couldn't believe, like, he just wasn't willing to hear and listen. And I wonder, I know that Cardano has been, has its green credentials for so long, due to it, it's just such a more efficient kind of design of the system, relying on game theory rather than on like cryptographic hashing to secure the network, right? But I think this is a kind of maybe an opportunity with the mind share that NFTs are getting to really play up this idea. My brother has a media company. He was trying to release an NFT collection for some of his IP characters, and like his fan base immediately turned on him, saying, how dare you do this? This is you're doing a cash grab and ruining the environment. And I said, you need to explain to them that not all blockchains have this aspect to them. And it's kind of like the whole Elon Musk thing, right? I didn't really see Cardano. I think Elon actually pushed the whole conversation forward by quite a few years, and there might have been some temporary pain, the whole markets and everything like that. But I think that the timeline for Cardano achieving a more significant role in blockchains was actually accelerated by that whole conversation. And if we can really kind of emphasize, you want to do NFTs, but you want to do it in a more energy efficient way, we have a place for you. I think that's a pretty powerful advantage we have.
Yeah,
again,
I agree completely with you. And one question I wanted to ask you is, where do you see the future of algorithmically generated NFTs? Because they are so interesting to me, and especially as more people think about this and more people get into it, a lot is possible in 5 years.
I mean, the original thing that I wanted to do for Unsigs was to use Oracle-based data to actively, have the thing be dynamic. I had the unlucky problem that I fell in love with what I made while I was making it, and it was just static. And I felt like as an MVP, it was good enough. I think the market kind of validated that hypothesis, because we were able to sell out the 31,000 pieces for, around 900,000 ADA in sales. Now I'm retired from my job in AI development, so it worked, and now I'm working on the next version of it, which is, would say, a further exploration of that idea, similar to what you guys are doing. I think while I was selling out, I caught some feels, as I say it. I'm a pretty unemotional person usually, but I was just so overwhelmed that people who could right click and save as were choosing to buy, and I made a uninformed tweet to say that I'm just going to give away the next thing that I do, which is going to utilize Plutus. To more directly answer your question and wrap this answer up, sorry. Right now, all of the on-chain projects, like, we're not really on-chain. There's a bit of code on-chain, but it executes either in the browser through JavaScript, or in my case, in a Python environment off-chain. Right? But I think it would be really interesting to actually bring some of that computation directly on-chain, and I'm trying to figure out how to do that right now in Plutus, and it's quite fun. So that's where I see it. It's a little bit easier on Ethereum with these projects like Fidenza, which I only became aware of after Unsigs were released, but because all of their NFTs are embedded in smart contracts anyway, you can actually do some of that kind of computation on-chain, as I understand it. But up until this point, that's not really been possible on Cardano. So I'm running through Plutus right now for the second or third time and trying to understand it all.
I think there will be a lot of adoption, because those are the millennials that are already part of the DeFi community, and they're gamers. But I absolutely agree that we need to also try and stimulate mainstream. Because it would be, I find it sad that I'm here in London. I'm meeting Uber drivers that were that are here from Syria or Afghanistan, that were teachers or doctors. So
Mhm.
unfortunately, sometimes economies and, well, geopolitics, drive people away from doing things that they really should be doing. And I'd love to try and find a way that we can use the decentralized finance community and the blockchain community to provide tools so that people can carry on being teachers in Afghanistan or doctors in India and not have to become Uber drivers in London.
That's the credential problem, right? We were talking about earlier on, is that a lot of these educational systems, they just don't have like trustable records of there's two issues. One is, are the standards of the doctors in Afghanistan up to snuff in the EU comparatively? But even if you do have that, the nature of a lot of those some of those countries is that you can buy a credential, right? But having this be on chain and hopefully in a more like it's harder to fake a record from kindergarten through your all through your primary education and secondary, and so hopefully that can allow for more transferable I don't know, skill sets or educational certifications to be across borders, right?
And look, I think it's down to us. It's down to our community, and especially for the people that have done well, to look at investing in someone providing these tools. I became chairman of the Commercial Spaceflight Federation of America, and one of the people that was on my team was Elon Musk. And he used to do me a favor by giving me a ride in his jet. When we went to talk places, it was really cool. But we used to have. He's not someone I would ever bet against. He's an incredible intellect. And one of the things he said to me when we were talking about the plan, he said everything starts with education. So we need to make sure that people have access to education, so that people can then work inside their own communities and better their own communities, through education. So I really believe in that. And if we can use this to create paths where people have verifiable credentials, which are NFTs, or that they have verifiable credentials which become KYC, that allow them to have bank accounts, which are digital bank accounts, which are fully regulated, that allow them to get loans and build their own communities and build wealth and access to education in their own communities. That's the direction we should be doing, as well as allowing them to play games online and make money from games online. Why not? There's no reason that they shouldn't do that. But our community needs to be able to provide the tools, and I think Cardano is an enormous tool to be able to take us in that direction by reducing the cost of enterprise.
Thankfully, one of the ethos in cryptocurrency is education. From joining the space, any question that I've ever asked has been answered by somebody else if I'm asking it in the right place. And I try to extend that, through my YouTube videos and through my Discord. And I do agree with you completely. That is how we get to a better world using, the tool that is Cardano.
It's interesting, this whole talk about gaming. I was recently talking to Bullish Dumpling, who's a Chinese origin person, I think from London now. But I was trying to think about analogies that kind of fit her normal audience. And it made me realize, China is a great innovator in the past of things like paper and gunpowder. And, these things, what made me kind of, as it relates to this conversation, is any new technology has kind of political, economic, creative/artistic applications. And sometimes they start in one area and migrate over. So, like a gunpowder was originally like for firework displays in China, right? And it needed to come into Europe to be put into, what do they call it? Like arquebusiers or something, these early muskets and that kind of thing, like weaponizing it, right? Paper as well, has literary or artistic applications into fiat currency. And so I think what's really interesting as it relates to NFT space is kind of the conversation we're having now is it's starting in the art space, maybe because of the lack of utility necessary for art to kind of flourish. It's really interesting to me to not just think about NFTs, but also blockchain technology in general. How is this going to seep into not just DeFi has been the killer app for so many years, not just the economic realm, but a little bit the geopolitical, a little bit the creative, and all these other kind of areas of human life. Because as much as money is necessary for life, it is, if you only live your life about money, you have a very shallow or shade of a life available to you. So it's quite interesting to me that seeing this new technology kind of blossom in front of our eyes kind of made me think about some of these other implications and what's going to happen. Quite exciting.
That's really
And
interesting. It's expression, isn't it? You know, what we are doing is we're facilitating expression, or whether that's a Claymate or a CryptoPunk. People are then saying, "Look, I like that. I would like to own that, or I would like to create that." So we are facilitating expression, which is basically human nature and human culture, which we should celebrate.
Most fundamental human thing, right?
Yeah.
So I want to ask you guys, the last topic is, where do you see yourself in 5 years and also your project relative to NFTs, if you're still in that space?
It's an interesting question, and like something that kind of you touched on earlier is the fact that since releasing this bigger scale, so obviously Claymates have been around since April, and we were doing these small mint animations, which are kind of for fun, and it was, it's quite a small, tight-knit community in that sense, like a lot of people that really loved it. And then it got to a point where obviously we were selling out quite quickly, and people were kind of asking, when one of ones, when this, when that, and we decided to do this bigger drop, which obviously went down better than we expected. But it's been 1 week since launch, and like my DMs are just full of when next drop, or what is the utility? What is your roadmap? And I kind of felt like roadmap is something that I haven't even heard that term since I was working in an office like 10 years ago. It's not really something that I instinctively associate with art or with NFTs. But it doesn't mean that I didn't see it going further. It doesn't mean that I haven't got loads of plans for the project. It's just that like having it kind of instantly available to everyone after we've just released is like kind of overwhelming me. But at the same time, like I do think we're sticking around and we have loads of plans. Something that I said and I'll continue to say for everyone that's kind of involved in the project is that I think it's better to deliver before you make promises. And so we have a lot of huge ideas, and we are hiring at the moment. But I have seen a lot of projects that have released roadmaps with things that they will, quite frankly, not be able to achieve. Yeah. And actions speak louder than words. We're going to deliver. We've got a lot of things. I think our success will be somewhat to do with ourselves. Our team is definitely committed and pushing forward, but it's also going to be based on the success of NFTs in general. If NFTs are thriving, then we'll be thriving. And I would hope that we'll be sticking around. But yeah, of course, like it's difficult. We know that we'll be trying our best and pushing and delivering and developing and continuing to grow. So
I'm curious on where you see Unsig in 5 years, or what you
I totally agree with you guys. Like the roadmap to me is like this weird vestigial leftover of the DeFi ICO thing, right? Yeah. Where like you just pumped bags and you promised the sky, and like released an art collection, and I had no intention of like there's no roadmap. Like this is, if you don't like the art, don't buy it. Right? And again, like it was kind of an after the fact notion when it became clear that I'd be able to quit my job because of people supporting me and essentially retire because I was financially independent. I like, wow, this is just too much. And I had to say thank you in some way. And the best way that I could come up with was promising to give, basically using smart contracts, turn unsigs into a token, which will like be redeemed from another smart contract, and then give you the next collection that I work on, which I've been calling V2, out of bad software development practices. It has nothing to do with unsigs. It's just another on-chain art collection, which will not look anything like unsigs. It won't be named unsigned algorithms. It'll just be something. But I've kind of taken the same stance as you guys. There's been some big examples of people promising the sky and then rug pulling. Like, don't buy anything that you wouldn't buy based on what they've released today, right? Like, and expect that anything that is promised, like if it happens, great, but don't count on it, right? And so it's like a extra serving of dessert after the meal, right? Like you're buying what you can see, what you're gonna get in your wallet, and if you're not happy with that, don't buy it, because more often than not, these are anonymous teams or people who don't, they just owe nothing to you, right? And once the money is gone, it's gone. So
yeah, and even being in a transparent team, you don't owe anything, but you can still believe in the community, and you can still, I want to give stuff. I don't think that I owe it, but it's like I want to deliver that because I want to take the project further. I haven't done it just so that I can stop making art, stop making people laugh, stop people creating this community and engaging. I don't owe it, but I'm still going to give it at some point, one way or another. I'm still going to give it all my all in that sense, and my team's really committed. But yeah, I think it's like a really important point because we do get hounded on it, and especially being in a really public team, I do feel quite an immense amount of pressure, especially working at input output. Like people are just in my DMs, obviously, and they know who I am. And absolutely, as I said, like we're committed, and I think that's more than a lot of teams can say, especially when you don't even know the team. But also it's completely fair enough to be anonymous because it is that pressure. So I kind of respect both sides of that.
The last thing I'll say before moving on to Alex is I think as someone who has a little bit of notoriety in this space, like what I've decided to do to kind of fight this a bit is like I'm not going to sell NFT collections anymore. Like they will all be minted at cost for the round trip ADA fee plus the minting transaction, and I'm only going to collect. I might have a slightly higher royalty banked in, maybe 5 to 10%, but like I want to set that as a standard, and I almost want to like kill the ability of people to rug pull other people. Right? Like, you what you do by doing that is you make it accessible to everyone. One thing I'm very sad about is now that the floor is around 1,250 to 1,500 ADA for unsigs. Like I get people in my DMs who want to buy and want to participate, but like it's just too much money for them. Like who has $4,000 to spend on a bit of code on a chain, right? So I think this shifting the model to be I only see any remuneration if the project succeeds, right? And in the long term, the project can only succeed if I actually have delivered on what I said I would and that kind of thing. And so I think people that becomes popular, it'll be a lot harder to rug pull because basically the only thing that you can get out of it is nothing, right? You only see gains if people see gains on the secondary market. That's just my idea for that. Sorry for talking. Thanks.
I'm afraid I'm a planner. I like to have a roadmap of my own. So even it wouldn't be fictional if someone. I have a number of roadmaps. That's always the way I've operated. I was a pilot in the Air Force in the UK, and so you have to have a plan when you go flying. Otherwise, random things happen. We built Virgin Galactic and spent a lot of money. And if you have 800 engineers building a spaceship, you have to give them a plan. So you would imagine I have a plan. So I just think it's beholden on us, people in our communities, to do good, and to try and do things for the greater good. And when you've made enough money to put a roof over your head and feed your kids, and then we really need to be starting to look around us. Apart from expressing ourselves through art and enjoying ourselves, we should be trying to help other people. And also, so we need to look after the planet, because otherwise there is no planet B. At the moment, I have a deal with Elon Musk. We're actually, he's going to give me a free ride to Mars. And I said, well, I don't want to do that. I've got 3 kids. I want to make sure that the planet is as beautiful, when they grow up to enjoy it as it was in my childhood.
100%. And also just to add to that, I think that there are a lot of projects at the moment, including mine, which obviously can't deny that have turned over a lot in a short period of time. And there's no, I don't know, you don't have to, obviously, at the end of the day, it's your own project and you can do with that what you want. But we did start the Clay Way, which is something that by the time this goes out, actually around $40,000. And, we choose these different charities, and it's just like, of course you don't have to do that, right? I do understand that, but if you're in a position that you can, I think it's great. And as you said, Big Pay, you did 10% of your projects, and I think if you can, why not? Especially at the moment where there's this much going around, flying around, changing hands. It's just an extra thing that we can do as a community.
Yeah, I actually spoke with somebody, from Maps after I did the donation, and I honestly cried when the call was over, because they just told me that, they had passed phase 2 research trials for MDMA, and it was classified as a breakthrough trial. And they had high hopes for the phase 3 trial. And they felt that, in 2 to 3 years, people with PTSD would actually, have the ability to get MDMA psycho-assisted therapy. And, it felt so much greater, helping that cause that I feel have this exponential benefit around the world than it did just raising a bunch of money selling art, and
well done, Peyton.
I think you said it there, Alex. It's what you do once you, can provide for yourself and your family. The next step is to, give back, because that's where you're going to find real value in this world.
Yeah. I mean, look, we're also lucky, being probably born into societies where you get an identity. There are, almost 2 billion people on the planet that don't have access to a usable identity. It's ridiculous. And they're not just in the third world, they're in the first world as well. People that are homeless in New York have real problems because they don't have an address, claiming their veterans benefits. It's ridiculous. They need to have a sovereign identity, whether they can prove it's them based on probably facial recognition and other biometrics, that they can claim what's rightfully theirs. Anyway, so look, it's up to this community. We have tools now, and Cardano can be a really key part of that, to give everyone on the planet their own identity. And then once you have your own identity, all sorts of other things that can be attached to it, which are basically NFTs, verifiable credentials, whether that's KYC, AML, credit ratings, all the rest of it, that then gives you access to banking. So not only can you give 2 billion people on the planet access to an identity, but you can give the 1.5 billion people that don't have any form of banking a bank. What I would like to do, my roadmap eventually, I'd love to be part of a team that creates access to banking for every individual on the planet, everyone. And I think, and of course, that goes with an identity for everyone, because then people can then help themselves rather than have to jump on a plane, flee their country, take their family with them, because that's the easiest way to provide security. Anyway. It's a long and winding roadmap to get there. I don't think all the pieces are there, but I think we need to use this technology to do good.
Yeah, I agree. It was actually, the same thing with Bloom. We had a very successful start, and then, the next obvious step is, how do we give back to the chain? And that's why we're hiring developers and we're working on stuff that's, going to be open source, because we feel that contributing to this ethos of, decentralization and, building this infrastructure for people, across the world, to better their lives is much more important than just processing transactions, But it's been a great day. It's been a great podcast. I appreciate you guys all coming on today. Is there anything that you'd like to say before we hop off here? Make sure you guys also list, where people can look more into your projects and, learn more as well.
Sure. So I'll just round up because I actually have to jump. So if you want to get involved, it's just the Claymates, just Clay Nation, and you can just check us out and join us, join the population of Clay Nation, and looking forward to welcoming you. But yeah, thank you so much for hosting this. I'm looking forward to actually meeting everyone while we're here at the summit. Thank you very much. I'll speak to you soon.
See you.
Sure. So I think Unsigned Algorithms is very active on Twitter mostly, as well as in the Discord. We just got a vanity URL, so discord.gg/unsigs will get you there. We haven't had any mutinies yet. If you want to join and start a mutiny, it'd be awesome to get some more flavor in the community. That's about it for me. Thank you so much, Peyton, for the talk, and Alex also, and Lena for quite an illuminating conversation.
Yeah, I just want to add, it's been a pleasure being part of the panel, Peyton. So thank you for inviting us along for this. Really illuminating. Theos.fi, liquidity for NFTs on Cardano. Come and have a look. Place your NFTs with our pools and gain some liquidity. A shout out for a project which is just being launched today, I think, that at the UN General Assembly, that the Global Blockchain Business Council are part of today. One of our partners at Theos.fi is Global Pandemic Shield, GPS. They're announcing the sale of an NFT, I think today, for a six-figure number, which is basically intellectual property for a monoclonal antibody which will treat COVID. And the idea of this global pandemic shield is to provide it to people in developing nations that don't have access to drugs. So these are really good projects, and these are the projects that Theos Theos wants to back. That NFT will be minted on Theos and minted on Cardano, and it will be for the people of the planet that don't get access to the drugs that they should get access to.
Yeah. Well, awesome. If you guys are watching this on the YouTube channel, I would appreciate it if you liked and commented down below. And also, right below this, there'll be links to all of their projects, to Theos's Twitter, to Alexander's Twitter, and also the Claymates Twitter. But thank you guys so much. Again, I do agree this was an awesome conversation. I'm excited to upload it and see what people think. But everyone watching this, I really hope you have a great rest of your week or weekend, whatever day you're watching this. I'll see you guys.